Fraternidad Ifa de las Américas, podcast dimensional.
Hola, sean todos bienvenidos a nuestro espacio podcast dimensional de la Fraternidad Ifa de las Américas. Un espacio dedicado al conocimiento profundo de Ifa y su impacto en nuestras vidas. Hoy exploraremos un tema muy interesante que hemos venido tocando con otros invitados, que es el tema dedicado a la adivinación, al Dafa en Ifa. La conexión entre la comunicación entre el adivino y el oráculo. Nos acompaña nuestro invitado Babá Falokun Fatumbi. Bienvenido, Babá. Aboloboye, Babá. Bienvenido.
Gracias.
El día de hoy, Babá Falokun, quisiera que me hablara sobre el tema de la adivinación. ¿Cómo se debe usar la adivinación para encontrar soluciones a los problemas? Y el correcto uso de las palabras utilizadas en la adivinación. Quisiera, por favor, nos diera su punto de vista, Babá Falokun.
So, I have been studying liturgical Yoruba language for 40 years, and I have noticed that there is some concepts commonly used during divination that are misunderstood. Some of the misunderstanding is a result of superimposing Catholic ideas on Ifa. The tradition of Ifa is at least 10,000 years old, and it's based on the teachings of a historical prophet who we call Orunmila, who lived in Ile Ife, who had some very specific principles that he taught people in terms of how to use divination as a problem-solving tool. So let's start with that. So the first point that Orunmila made is that divination is a problem-solving tool, not a fortune-telling. So because it's a problem-solving tool and not a fortune-telling tool, that's going to shape how you ask a question. So I'm going to give some examples. Somebody will come to me and say, is so-and-so my soulmate? I don't know. I don't care. Divination is not going to answer. A well-trained Awo will say, do you want to be with this person? And will ask the question, how do you make a relationship work? So I will ask the question, how do you make a relationship work? And then it's up to you to decide if you want to make the effort. If you leave that decision to a diviner if the relationship breaks up, then you're just going to blame the diviner, and that's not fair, not real, and not effective, and doesn't accomplish anything. As a problem-solving tool, the basic premise is whatever problem is being discussed in the Odu, Ifa wants to expand your consciousness so you can fix the problem yourself. If you understand the problem and can then fix the problem in the real world using your own critical thinking, is known as Ire. Now, in the diaspora, the opposite of Ire is frequently called Osobo, and that's not a good use of Yoruba language. The word Osobo is a reference to a minority ethnic group in Nigeria. It's not used by diviners. The word for being in resistance to Ire or not understanding the lesson, that word is Ibi. And the word Ibi in Yoruba means placenta. So the idea of Ibi or placenta is that you're holding on to an idea that no longer serves you. When a baby's born and brings the placenta with them into the world, they need to cut the umbilical cord or the placenta will become toxic. So the basic polarity in Ifa is between Ire, understanding the problem and having the resources to fix it, or Ibi, being in resistance to the lesson. And based on that resistance, staying stuck, trying to repeat old solutions that you know don't work.
está claro que en la práctica afrocubana, en la diáspora afrocubana, utilizamos la palabra osobbo. Lo que se nos explicó y pudieron conseguir información los sacerdotes afrocubanos que han profundizado un poco en el tema, ellos pudieron conseguir que esto quería decir que rechazaba a Igbo como el instrumento de adivinación, el determinante, Igbo y Rance, Osob Igbo, que no aceptaba el ido, o sea que era negativa. Es lo que se explicó y se enseñó en la afrocubana. Ahora Babá está explicando esto y yo pregunto si está mal seguir haciendo eso bajo este entendimiento que hemos nosotros utilizado por tanto tiempo. Esa es mi pregunta para usted, Babá.
The first is this. EB does not mean you're facing the anger of spirit and need to appease those spirits so they stop being angry. There's not a single sentence from the prophet Oromila that says that Orishas are ever angry at people and need to be appeased. That's all New World Catholic Christian thinking that's got nothing to do with personal Ifa at all. And people think, oh, I've made the gods angry, now I've given them food, I can keep doing what I'm doing and it won't matter because they're happy. That's not traditional Ifa at all. The purpose of making a bow is to ask Spirit for guidance and help in expanding your consciousness, not to appease them or make them, to bribe them, so to speak. You know, the basis for that misunderstanding is the fact that the word abo, and I can show you the history of this, of who mistranslated the word. The word abo means offering. It does not mean sacrifice. It does not mean sacrifice. Abo is not a sacrifice. It's an offering designed to put your consciousness in alignment with the solution. It's an offering made to ask Spirit to guide you to a deeper understanding of a particular situation. You know, sacrifice implies giving something up to appease an angry God. That's a Christian idea, that's a Jewish idea, it's an Islamic idea, but it's got nothing at all to do with the teachings of Oromila. He never said that, he never taught that, he never gave guidance in that area. For traditional Awo, making an offering, making an Abo, is an alchemical process designed to expand consciousness. And to think of it differently is to miss the lesson completely. So if you are in resistance to the lesson, your resistance takes one of four forms. The first is you're unclear because you've got confusion in your ori, so you clean the ori. The second is you need guidance from the ancestors, so you make an offering of food to the ancestors and ask for their guidance. Sometimes the confusion comes from not understanding nature of the world we live in. And then we appeal to Orisha for clarity. Now, when we appeal to Ifa for clarity, what we're saying is we need the support of the entire community. Ebo Ifa is always done with Egbe Ifa, never done with one Awo by himself, ever. It's a communal collective process where the collective prayers of the Awos in possession with the spirit of Elah brings transformation, elevation, and illumination to the person who's struggling in their confusion. And the process of making a bow is accumulative. So you'll ask the Igbo, is this person confused? Yes. Clean the head. You'll say, do they need support from the ancestors? Yes. You clean the head and talk to the ancestors. Is the problem they're confused about natural law and don't know where they fit into the scheme of things? Yes. So you clean the head, you talk to the ancestors, and you ask Orisha for guidance. And then if the Ire comes from Ifa, it's saying that you need the support of the Ifa community to get through the problem. So to consider any of those things appeasement for an angry God is missing the point. There's no belief in traditional Ifa that blood is magic. We kill a goat to feed the Awos who come to pray on our behalf. That's a culturally appropriate gesture. There are no grocery stores in the bush in Nigeria. If a dozen Awos come to your house, there's an expectation you will feed them. And I've never seen anybody eat goat meat outside of the context of some kind of communal celebration. But it's not the blood that's somehow magical. That's a silly idea. It's the idea that you're going to thank those Awos who are supporting your confusion and bringing it into clarity by feeding them. When it comes time to separate the meat, that's serious, serious business. You know, different families get different portions of meat. They weigh it, they measure it, they pass it out, and every single piece of that goat gets eaten or used. And we've lost sight of that. We've confused the process of feeding our elders with the idea of sacrificing the spirit, and that's a misconception completely.
Pero no quiere decir esto que yo mañana me hago una adivinación, babá, con Orúmila, con Ifá, y Orúmila me marca un epo que lleva Akuko, Ebure, Abuko, Ejele, y no lo vaya a hacer. Lo que estoy entendiendo es que no es todo el tiempo necesario el sacrificio de este tipo. Es lo que estoy entendiendo.
The list of offerings in the books that are available in English and Spanish is a list of all the possible offerings for that verse leading up to Ifa. So if you determine that the person is confused, people do divination by saying, well, does it need a goat? Does it need a pigeon? They ask the question of different components and get a yes-no answer. That's not the way divination is done in Africa, ever. Every verse has its own traditional offerings for each of those levels of confusion. So if a person is confused, you clean their ori with a pigeon. You understand? If a person needs guidance from the ancestors, you clean their head with a pigeon and make an offering of ademu, meaning food that the ancestors normally ate, usually those bean cakes.
Akara, baba, akara.
Yes, akara. If you need to get guidance from the Orisha, then birds are offered to the Orisha, but that's not essential. You can offer food to the Orisha as well. The issue is finding somebody who's a medium for that spirit and have them come and speak for spirit on the issue that's being addressed. You understand? So each of those elements, when an Awo is divining for himself at the beginning of every day, the very end of the daily prayer says the words Odaraji, 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 meaning forgive me from having to make an offering because that's too complicated. I got to get through my day. You're doing divination to ask for clarity about what the lesson is for that day. Now, if you keep getting the same lesson every day for a few days in a row, you might want to go to an elder and have a bow done. But for the most part, that's not necessary to do offerings every day at all. And there's nothing in the tradition that ever suggested it was. People make a lot of drama around offerings because they can charge a lot of money for it. But how can you charge money to yourself? I mean, how can you incur expenses when the issue is expanding consciousness? The idea that you've got to spend a lot of money to understand the problem is just foolishness. And we've allowed ourselves to become so stuck in what I call magical thinking that we're missing the obvious point of the lesson. And the way you get the lesson is by understanding the metaphysical principle that's presented to you that day, and by understanding that the principle that causes a problem is resolved by the opposite Odu. So the real issue is getting the Odu that comes, understanding it, and understanding how the opposite Odu creates the stasis of the balance that allows for a resolution of the problem. Now, if you can't figure that out on your own, then you go to an elder for guidance. But we try to teach Awos how to do divination for themselves so that they can become independent, not dependent. The notion of being dependent on the priest is a really extremely Catholic idea. It's got nothing to do with Ifa at all. So the thing that's not understood in the diaspora is, it's not my job to fix your problem. It's my job to know who in the community can fix your problem. So if I do divination and determine the nature of your illness, then I will refer you to the priestess of Nana Baroko, who can fix serious illnesses. I will refer you to the Oni Shegun, it's the herbal doctor. I will refer you to the Osain priest. I will bring the diagnosis and say, okay, now you need to go see this person or that person, and I will keep the divination open, meaning I won't close it, end it until you're fully healed, which may mean I may keep a divination open for months and have you come back every week or two to check your progress and to ask the question, okay, is this Iya the one who can heal the problem, or do we have to go to the next village over, or do we have to go to Iyami? An offering alone rarely heals a problem. The healing comes from prayer. It comes from healing energy, laying on hands. It comes from the use of herbs. It comes from expertise among those who understand the healing arts. Right? Now, a lot of times, illness is based on what I call self-hexing or depression or anxiety. And an Awo can fix those issues at their foundation, and a bow can be used to assist in that process. But it's still a process, and it's still something that requires constant monitoring. See, the place where the real confusion comes in, there's no place in Odu Ifa that says an Awo is the voice of God and you got to do everything he says because he's all-knowing and omnipotent and some kind of divine being. That's a Catholic idea. That is not an Ifa idea. So a lot of times, if you're using Ifa as a problem-solving technique, you keep doing things until you find the solution, right? So if you come to me and you have cancer, I'm going to refer you first to Nana because they've got the best medicine for that. And then I'm going to refer you maybe to the Oni Shegun or the Osain priest. I'm going to keep bringing resources together until the cancer goes into remission. And while I'm doing that, I'm going to make sure that you're keeping a positive attitude. So where the Abo comes in, if you understand the way the Ori works, if you've got 20 elders in Egbe Ifa that are holding the idea that you're in perfect health, it's very hard for you to see yourself as sick. And so that's where the element of prayer comes in. That's where the element of offering comes in. But, just like in any other culture, if a person's sick, you treat the illness. And there's no way that cancer is going to go away just because you kill a goat. That doesn't even make any sense. So the art of doing divination, the art of healing, takes study, understanding, consciousness, and it takes a community of experts. And the notion that one diviner can fix everything is just, it's wrong. It's silly. A good diviner is judged by what's called suru, which is inner peace. A good diviner sits quietly and is not disturbed by anything and explains things clearly and is available to be friendly and supportive. We've got diviners that are critical of people, that call people names, that do all kinds of horrible things. And that's never going to be effective. For example, it's absolutely taboo for a diviner to have sex with his clients. But we have diviners who say, well, the Abo is you have to have sex with me. That is not only true, it's a crime. If an Awo ever tells you that, what you need to do is pick up a phone and call the police. Because you're dealing with a criminal, not a priest. And to make excuses for that or to think that's acceptable is destroying our faith. But it's not only taboo, it's a crime. You understand? In the United States, that kind of manipulation is called sexually predatory behavior. And when a priest engages in sexually predatory behavior, they're committing a crime. That's why all those priests in the Catholic Church went to jail. You know, it's no different for us. There's so much effort to cover that up. It's shameful. So we need to begin to address those issues.
Babá, una pregunta. Cuando usted nos plantea que cuando un Odufa presenta una problemática, debemos recurrir a su parte contraria del Odu para conseguir la solución. ¿Nos podrías hablar un poco de ese tema, por favor?
Opposite means that every single line becomes a double line. Every double line becomes a single line. For example, Osa is not the opposite of Ogunda. Osa is the opposite of Obara. Osa Ogbe, the opposite is Obara Oyeku. So you use the example of Ogbe Ika, right? Did I hear that? Ogbe Ika. So Ogbe Ika, you have to really become very knowledgeable about the metaphysical principles. We can go over that one night if you want. So we're not going to cover all that tonight. But let's just take the example of Ogbe Ika. Ogbe Ika says you have an open road to effectively pray for guidance from the mothers. That's a really, really good. But if you're not being effective in your prayers, it means that there's something you're doing in your daily life that is in opposition to your destiny. Oyeko means you need to let go of things and cycle that are not consistent with your destiny. So let's say that you pray to the mothers, but you've got a serious drinking problem. Oyeko means the death of the person with the drinking problem, so you can go back into alignment with your higher self. The opposite of Ika is Otora. If you focus on what's broken in your life, you're asking for a mystic vision, Otora. That's what Otora means. Otutura, the spirit of coolness. So you're identifying things that you're doing that are obstructing your ability to access your higher self, and then you're asking for a vision of what it looks like to fix that. So if there's resistance or EB in Ogbe Ika, the solution is Oyeku Otora. Let go of bad behavior and ask for a vision of elevating your consciousness to the place of balance between your destiny and the blessing of the mothers.
Si yo veo el Odu, Ogbe Ika, y veo una problemática X, yo debo remitirme a Oyekun Otura y buscar en ese Odu la solución para la problemática que me presenta Ogbe Ika, ¿correcto?
So to be clear, on a practical level, if you have Ogbe Ika in EB caused by confusion, you want to say the Oriki Ire for Ogbe, Otura, Oyeku, and, Ogbe Ika, Oyeku, and Otura. You want to do the Oriki Ire for all four verses, for all four principles, for both verses. You understand? The issue is you need guidance from the ancestors. You want to pray with those same principles. You want to tell the ancestors, I have experienced perfect alignment, the blessing from the mothers, but I'm lost that. Show me what I need to let go of so I can reconnect to the spirit of the mothers. And you do that by doing the Oriki Ire in each of those four legs of Ifa. Okay. So I know that what I'm saying is extremely controversial, but I'm going to give you an example that'll hopefully help it to make sense. So let's say you get an Odu where Shango is trying to teach you the lesson of humility. Shango is the spirit of fire. If you build a fire, you can use that fire to warm your hands. You can use that fire to read a book. You can use that fire to cook food. But if you sit down in the fire and burn your behind, It's not because Shango's mad at you, it's because you're being an idiot. So the issue is figuring out how to use the ashe of spirit in a way that expands your consciousness. And as long as you think that the spirit's punishing you, you will never flex the muscle of critical thinking to do any problem resolution, and you'll be stuck in dependency on a priest who's telling you the lie that Shango needs to be appeased with an expensive offering, even though the notion that he's mad is silly. Fire doesn't care how you use it. Fire is going to be fire no matter what. If you sit in the fire and burn yourself, it's not because fire is evil. It's not because fire is angry. It's not because fire wants to punish you. It's because you have not understood the proper relationship to fire. That's the whole meaning of the word Iwapwele. I come to greet the earth so I can understand the forces of nature and live in harmony with them. And that's never going to happen as long as I think the forces of nature are mad. Rumila taught the lesson that life is made to work. We just need to figure out how it works and live our life in alignment with those principles. Ashe.
Ese es un problema que se ve en la práctica porque se han humanizado los orishas. Se les ven como humanos, con sentimientos, con virtudes, con emociones. Y realmente, como dice Babá, debemos de aprender primero lo básico que es el principio metafísico de Orisha y de Odu. Sería un llamado de atención para la reflexión de todos los seguidores de Orisha Ifa, de que empezáramos a ver esto desde ese punto de vista.
In Africa, it's taboo to tell somebody they're going to die. I hear that all the time in the diaspora. Oh, you're going to die if you don't make Ocha in the next 9 days, you're dead. If you said that in Africa, the client would pick up a stick and beat you. It's considered hexing. It's absolutely taboo to tell a person they're going to die during divination. Absolutely taboo. There's no exception. You don't do it. It's wrong. Now, you can tell a person they're seriously sick. You can offer advice for getting healthy, but you cannot say you're going to die and you need to follow my instructions and give me lots of money to stay alive. And in fact, in Africa, if divination comes up that the person is seriously sick, you have an obligation to heal them and not necessarily look for money. So we got that all backwards, all turned around, all out of sync with the cultural protocol, and it's causing problems. You know, I know I seem passionate about it, but we need to start fixing these problems. You know, if somebody comes to me sick, and they need initiation to feel better, I never charge for that, ever. Right? Many times people come in sick, let's initiate that person. The issue is fixing the problem. If your life gets better, my life gets better. But there's no way you can come to me seriously sick and say, give me all your money, I'm going to initiate you, and because I'm all powerful, that'll ensure that you stay alive. That is just made up fool, not consistent with our faith. And if somebody tells you you're going to die, my recommendation is immediately get up, put your shoes on, back out the front door, and never go back to that place again. Because that person obviously doesn't know what they're talking about at all. All right? So it's all right to make the observation that somebody's incompetent. It's called evaluating the quality of the work. Just because somebody's initiated doesn't mean they're trained, doesn't mean they're a good person, doesn't mean they can fix your problem, doesn't mean they're the voice of God, doesn't mean they have ashe. It just initiation just means they have permission to study. Some people get initiated and study. Some people get initiated and don't study. I'm telling you that the one who studies knows more than the one that doesn't. More common sense can that be than to be clear about that. A man once came to me and said, oh, I just got initiated. I said, that's wonderful. I said, which Orisha did you receive? And his answer was, oh, I haven't gotten into it that deeply. In Ode Ramo, there's about 75 Awos. Okay? You understand? 75? At the most, 3 or 4 of them do divination, and everybody else helps those 3 or 4 people who do the divination. I've never seen divination in Ode Ramo with fewer than 20 people doing the divining. I've never seen one Awo divine for a person ever in Africa. It's a collective problem solving, and I've never seen a man do divination for a woman without the elder mother's presence, ever. You understand? We need to not make stuff up and call it something that it's not. It's called cultural appropriation. And cultural appropriation is actually a crime under the rules of NATO and cultural preservation. I'm just calling for people to be more studious, more ethical, more conscientious, and more really caring, ultimately. This is about being able to access good character as the foundation for unconditional love. Anything else is a con, a hustle, foolishness, and irrelevant. Here's how I want to finish up, if you don't mind. There's an Odu that says, if all you can afford to offer is dirt, offer dirt with heart and your prayer will be answered.
Babá Falokun, si usted a la hora de hacer adivinación, usted tiene una metodología para determinar si viene IRE la persona, el IRE lo determina por orden, ya usted lo tiene establecido, por ejemplo, si es salud, si es evolución material, espiritual, desarrollo en los negocios. Si es IB, usted tiene que preguntar de acuerdo al orden o tiene de igual manera un orden. O sea, lo que quiero saber si tiene una metodología especial o varía, depende del orden o la profecía que usted está viendo.
No. The answer is no. They both, IRE always comes from Ori. EB always comes from Ori. Always comes from Ori. We don't have to ask where it comes from. We know where it comes from. It comes from here. The reason we make offerings is to clear this up and to make us think more clearly. If you say, does the EB come from the ancestors, you're saying, am I being hexed by some evil person? No. It's here. You're resisting the lesson. You know, the E-ray comes from the Orisha. That's silly. Why would the Orisha give you good fortune arbitrarily? The Orisha's job is to be that force in nature. Fire doesn't care if you have good fortune or bad fortune. It's up to you and your head to figure out how to use fire in a productive way. So the whole process of looking for E-ray and EB has got nothing to do with traditional Ifa. It's not done in traditional divination that I've seen. And we need to stop arguing over who's doing things correctly and actually take some time to study our faith. The way it's been done in Africa has been done that way for 10,000 years. There's a lot of wisdom there, a lot of understanding, and if we're just going to perpetuate the confusion, what's the point?
Quisiera aportar esto para los que quieran entender el sistema filosófico en que se basa Babá Falokun, le va a servir de mucho. Ahora, los que no estén de acuerdo con su filosofía y su forma metodológica de practicar Ifa, no se preocupen, no pasa nada. Usted puede seguir haciéndolo como usted lo hace. Es imposible que se critique. ¿No? Aquí nadie puede criticar, y él mucho menos, porque es un señor, es un Awo Orumila que cultúa el Iguacuele. Entonces no va a haber críticas.
Orumila said, the Ori that leaves the house in the morning is not the Ori that comes home at night. We have a task of understanding ourselves in the world. And that's what divination helps us with. It doesn't tell us what spirits like us and which ones spirit hate us and which ones need offerings because they don't like us and which ones are giving us arbitrary blessings. That doesn't help me at all. You understand? The difference is you can get to, I've been doing this for 40 years, and I'm telling you that you can get to a place where when you're out in the street and a problem comes up, you immediately recognize the Odu that problem is manifesting, and in the same moment you recognize the solution. So problem and solution come to you instantaneously in the same moment. That makes getting through the day a whole lot easier when problem and solution presents itself to you at the same time. You don't have to worry. You don't have to be confused. You don't have to blame other people. You don't have to get angry. You just connect to the world you live in and thank the Spirit for the blessing of each day.
Babá Falokun, para despedir este episodio, me encantaría que nos habláramos sobre la física cuántica enfrentándose o viéndose de frente con Ifa. ¿Qué me puedes hablar de eso?
So you can find the 16 principles of metaphysical principles of Odu in every single culture in Africa, literally. And the oldest expression of those principles is found in what's called the Emerald Tablets from ancient Egypt. And we know that Yoruba culture is connected to ancient Egypt because 30% of the Yoruba language is Coptic or Egyptian language. There's a group of ancient languages where the languages themselves are based on metaphysical principles. So the Yoruba language has 126 three-letter combination, each which is a expression of a metaphysical idea. And so those three-letter combinations are put together to form what are called liturgical words. And liturgical words are preserved in the scripture that we call Dafa. All right? So every liturgical word has 7. Okay, the first is how it affects me. The second level is how it affects you and I. The third level is how it affects my family. The fourth level is how it affects my community. The fifth level is how it affects my country or the larger community. The sixth level is how it affects the world, and the seventh level is how it affects the creation of the universe. Every single Yoruba word can be interpreted in one of those 7 levels, right? So if we're only using words from divination to talk about relationships and winning the lottery and not being hexed, we're only dealing with the first level of each word. The first sentence of every Ariki for Orumila says, Orumila Laraniba Nibikiji Oladumre Ajeju Ogun, which means Orumila is the witness to creation and has the medicine to create the world. So quantum physics tells us that the world comes into existence as a consequence of us being able to see a light wave and transforming it into a light particle. So that means all of creation is co-creation. And the prophet Orumila has taught us how that co-creation works, and he's taken that information and coded it into the symbolic verses of our sacred scripture. 10,000 years ago, our ancestors knew and understood every problem we are having right now today in the world. Every one of them. They understood it, they saw it, they were concerned about the future, and they preserved the information that we need to continue our survival. I believe that absolutely. And I also believe that as human consciousness evolves, Spirit speaks through certain people, downloading some of that information and giving us a deeper level of appreciation of liturgical words. So I studied quantum physics, and I sort of saw how it related to the 7th level of the words of Odu, but I didn't really understand it until I listened to Terrence Howard. Terrence Howard is the voice of the ancestors explaining the deepest levels of Odu Ifa, which means if you're an English-speaking person, before Terrence Howard started sharing his ideas, you couldn't really even begin to understand the fundamental principles of Ifa. The connection to those principles is a relatively recent phenomena in terms of intellectual understanding. But at the same time, those principles are energetic patterns. And when you say Ariki Ela, those energetic patterns appear in your consciousness. So that when you're initiated and the elder says, Ariki Ela, you will see the connection of the energy patterns of Odu, and you will get a vision of what the world around you looks like, which is why we say, Orumlia Laren Ipan, Orumlia, witness to creation. Ibikiji Oladunre, the first manifestation of those principles, Ajeju Ogun Abriti Apiju Ikuda, which means the medicine to cause the world to become manifest. So there's no thought that you can have that's not an Odu. There's no understanding of reality that you can have that's not an Odu. The tray, the verses, the marks of the Odu, the quadrants that we break up into that is a map of all of creation, and there is nothing that exists outside of those quadrants. Have an understanding. I mean, did you see the discovery in Egypt this week, what they discovered? There's no way that we can build that. There's no way we can reproduce that. It is beyond our comprehension. So what I'm saying is the ancient Africans had a level of science that is extremely sophisticated, and that it's coded into the symbolic language of Ifa. I also believe that there are people in the Western world who understand that science, and they're deliberately keeping it a secret, so that we have a ethical and moral obligation as Awo to teach that science and to not let the people who are keeping that information a secret control the way we see the world.
Suficiente. Creo que mejor abre boca que ese que no hay, Babá. De este tema usted seguirá conversando con nosotros más en otros episodios, pero creo que esto de Ifa y Orisha va más allá de las nubes.
Yeah, listen, next week we'll start speaking about Ifa science. It's going to take more than one conversation to explain it, but I'll give you an example of the way the words work. The word du means darkness in Yoruba. Du means the source of darkness. Odudu means the spirit of the source of darkness. Oduduwa means the spirit of darkness comes to earth. And so all the words that we use to refer to spirit reflects the process of evolution. It's true for all the Orishas, all the Odus, all the liturgical words. They all refer to interactions of fundamental forces in nature. And if we don't understand that, then what are we doing? That's our job as Awo, to understand that and teach it, and then use that understanding to solve problems. So if we're saying, well, I can't talk about it because it's a secret. No, there are no secrets. It's like saying, I'm going to be a Christian, but I can't tell you about Jesus. I mean, it's silly. Awo is the content of what it is we have to teach.
Babá Falokun, agradecido. Sabe que la Fraternidad Ifa de las Américas es su casa. Lo esperamos en siguientes y próximos episodios para que nos siga nutriendo de su conocimiento. Para todos los que quieran comunicarse con Babá Falokun Fatumbi, lo puede hacer a través de su amigo, hermano y estudiante ahijado Jason Águila, Gmail Jason16, y en Facebook @ifa Orisha. Ahí pueden contactarlos.
Adubai, gracias. How do you say stay safe in Spanish? Mantenga de seguro.
Onareo.
Esa es la comunidad en Facebook que puede ver todos los eventos que estamos teniendo, y como la comunidad en este podcast es en español, me puede comunicar conmigo y podemos tener una llamada con Babá Falokun y echar para adelante.
Podcast Dimensional de la Fraternidad Ifa de las Américas.